Welcome to Music Theory. This is Lesson 1, which starts in Chapter 1. In this chapter, you will be able to, by the time we're done, play a tune on the keyboard, identify notes on the keyboard, write treble clefs on a staff. There will be a short review of material. Immediately following that, we will identify notes on the treble staff, write notes on the treble staff, identify several types of notes, including whole, half, and quarter notes. Then we will also match notes on the keyboard with notes on the staff, and we'll end with you writing a familiar song that all of you love and will not love by the time we're done. So let's begin. Harmony is the study of how pitches or notes are arranged to make music. In order to explain these arrangements, it is convenient to show the keys on a piano keyboard. On the piano keyboard, each key plays a certain pitch. Each white key corresponds to a letter A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The letters proceed alphabetically from A to G and then go back to A. In other words, our musical alphabet, if you will, only has the letters A through G, which is very convenient because if we use letters A through Z, we'd need to be able to identify 26 different types of notes by sight. So A through G makes it a little bit easier. Black keys are arranged in alternating groups of 2s and 3. This pattern repeats over and over, and you'll notice when we work on the keyboard in class that they do alternate in groups of 2 and 3. This pattern is very helpful. It helps us identify where certain notes are. For example, to the left of 3 groups of black keys is an F, and you'll notice every 3 black keys, that F is always to the left. So that's something we don't have to guess about where it's going to be. If we know the pattern, we can identify it. Same with the 2 black keys. There's a C to the left of 2 black keys. This is very handy and something that we want to be able to identify and recognize very quickly. On the keyboard, keys to the left sound low, and keys to the right sound high. So as we move in this direction, our keys are going to get lower. And you can kind of notice that these notes here are getting lower as we move to the left, and so will the pitch that you hear. As you move to the right, the notes sound higher, and once again, you'll notice that the notes as they move up get a little bit higher. It's very convenient. I believe it's very logical, and I hope you see it that way as we go along. Middle C is often used as a reference note. It's very important that we're able to identify what and where middle C is. You notice that there are 2 middle C's here between these staves here, our 2 sets of lines. Now, this is the same note. However, to help with reading music, we're going to find that some notes carry over and can be used in a different place. Up here you'll notice that middle C is kind of highlighted. Especially for piano players, it's a very important note to find. It's simply a C that's in the middle of the keyboard. We call it middle C, and it's actually between or in the middle of both staves. It's very convenient, very easy to find, and we'll be using it a lot as a reference note. Now, the first G above middle C is an important note that we need to know, as well as the first F below middle C. These 3 notes, the middle C, the G above middle C, and the F below middle C, are notes that we'll come back and work with as time goes on. Now, let's move on. Music is written on a staff. A staff is a set of 5 lines and 4 spaces. lines and spaces of the staff are numbered from the bottom. In other words, the bottom line of the staff is line 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5 as you move up. The same goes with the spaces. We have space 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very easy. We want to remember that we start at the bottom and move up. If we go in the opposite direction and start from the top and come down, it's going to change the notes, the way that the notes are located on the staff, and we want to make sure that that does not happen. Each line in space stands for a certain pitch or note and is given a letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, as we remember from before. These letters refer to the letters for the keys on the keyboard. Each staff of music begins with a clef. A clef is a symbol which identifies a line and a space with a letter. The symbol here is a clef. We call it the treble clef. We also sometimes refer to it as the G clef. Now, we call it the G clef because the tail end that swoops around circles the second line. That second line is the line G. So it's called either the treble or the G clef. Very important to remember this G here because, as we referred to on the previous slide, that is the G that is above middle C, the G that we circled on the keyboard. All right, let's move on. Letter names proceed alphabetically on the staff from low to high, alternating lines and spaces. When G is reached, the letters go back to A and then repeat. In other words, we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then we start over, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, note heads are almost circular ovals which indicate which pitches to be played or sung. Note heads may be filled in, like I just wrote, or they may be open, like that. A note head is on a line if a line goes through it. You'll notice that the fourth line is going through the two notes that I just drew. If it is in a space, the line does not go through it as such. Does that make sense? This is a line note. This is a space note. Okay, let's move on again. There is a very fast way to identify the letters on a staff. We use mnemonic devices to do that. The notes in the spaces, starting with the bottom, spell the word face. So we have F, A, C, E. That spells the word face. Now, let's take a look at the lines from bottom to top. We have E, G, B, D, F. Now, if you learned this in elementary, great. If not, we're going to teach it to you right now. When we think of from bottom to top the lines of the treble staff, we think every good boy does fine. So we have face in the spaces. Our four spaces have four letters, spell face. The lines from bottom to top, we can say every good boy does fine, or every good boy deserves fudge, or Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. You can create your own mnemonic device. You just need it to be something that you can remember so you can quickly think of what the lines and spaces of the treble staff are. Now let's talk about different types of notes. A beat is a steady pulse which underlies the music. When you tap your foot to the music, you are usually tapping the beat. Stems are vertical lines which are frequently attached to the note heads. So if I wanted to draw a note head here, or a stem on this note head, I would draw that, just like that. Okay? Open note heads without stems are usually 4 beats long. They are called whole notes. So these open note heads that I drew here are called whole notes. They have no stem and they are not filled in. We would call them a whole note, and we would spell it W-H-O-L-E, almost referring to like entire, like the whole thing, whole notes. Okay? An open note head with a stem, like this one that I drew here, is called a half note. If we have a filled-in note with a stem, so if I take this note that I filled in and put a stem on it, we are going to call that a quarter note. You probably have noticed that we're kind of working in fractions here. If you think of whole as in being 1, then we have like a half and a quarter. Notes break down in very easy to understand ways. So think of things as whole, half, quarter. We're going to get into combining these as we go along. Now, we referred to the whole note as having 4 beats usually. Now, if a whole note has 4 beats, then what would a half note be, which is half of a whole? Well, half of 4 is 2, so a half note would have 2. Now, a quarter is half of a half or a quarter of a whole. So either a quarter of 4 or half of 2 is 1. So we can think of our whole note as having 4, half note as having 2, and quarter as having 1. And that should make a lot more sense as we go along. Now, as we do homework in Chapter 1, you're going to find several things it's going to ask you to do. It's going to ask you to draw the treble or G clef. It's going to ask you to draw different types of notes in certain places using our mnemonic device FACE, and every good boy does fine. So, if a question asked you to draw a whole note on G, then you would simply find a G and draw a whole note on it. If the chapter asked you to draw the line F, because we have 2 F's, a space F and a line F, it would ask you to draw a quarter note on the line F, then you would draw a quarter note right where it asks you to. Very simple. And you'll notice at the end of the chapter that it's going to have you write a little song using all of the things that we learned in this chapter. If you have any questions, you can refer back to the video. Otherwise, you can notate any of your questions and bring them to class. This is the end of Chapter 1. Congratulations.